Welcome to Potentiality, a space for big questions, deep conversations, and shared wisdom around the most meaningful thing we do as human beings, which is how we parent and educate the next generation. Today's conversation tells an extraordinary story of a young person who chose to act in a time of collective crisis and what became possible because of that initiative. I am delighted to introduce our guest, Lauren Sandidge, a mental health advocate, community leader, and the founder of Altadena Girls. Lauren brings a unique combination of experience in organizational development, creativity, and community building. Today, much of her work focuses on supporting the mental health and well being of young people and creating spaces where girls can feel seen, connected, and empowered. Welcome, Lauren. It's an honor to have you here.
Thank you so much. I'm so happy to be here.
Lauren, I remember last January of 2025, I was in Dubai when I was getting calls and messages from my family and friends all over the world asking if I was okay while the fires were happening in the LA County and abroad and outside of its bounds. I can't even imagine when I was watching the news and getting those messages, every single time I was in tears. And all I was thinking, the imaginable losses people were experiencing in those times of crisis. Your family, and your community were in the midst of it. And Altadena Girls began in the wake of Eden Fire when the community was going through an incredibly difficult moment. I
Mhm.
want to ask you to take us back to that time and share how this initiative first emerged.
Thank you. Yes, we were living in Pasadena, in Old Town Pasadena, which is just right over the freeway from Altadena. Both my kids' schools are in Altadena, and the day that the fires broke out, we were really scared. And like I think like everyone else, we had that first watch app, and we were all looking to see, what was going on, where it was moving, and having grown up in the South around tornadoes and floods and lots of natural disasters, I have learned to just go when you feel it's time to go and not really think about it. And so I didn't know if it was going to come, over the freeway, and it wasn't slowing down. So we just made the decision to evacuate to a friend's photography studio in Boyle Heights. And, you know, that's where it all started. It was Avery, my daughter, who's now 15, was really scared. All of her friends, were evacuated from their homes and at the Pasadena Convention Center. And I think from what I remember, she felt really helpless and like she needed to do something, and to act. And that was when we channeled it into Altadena Girls.
Thank you for sharing so vulnerably. I know it's not easy to relive those moments, and just shows the resilience of people who find themselves in those situations. You already answered partially to my next question because I really wanted to ask about Avery and the initiative she took. She was 14 at the time, and she really initiated this response.
Mm-hmm.
It's because of how she felt. And she also noticed things about her own friends and peers and other teens in the neighborhood. What is it that she noticed that made her feel that she needed to act and do something about it urgently? And she actually took the leadership to make that happen.
Yeah, so I think, what Avery noticed was that there was not a focus specifically on teen girls. She has really strong empathy and cares about her friends like they're her family, and really thought about what they were truly losing, which was like really their sense of self and a sense of normalcy. And, all the things that are in her bedroom as a teenage girl are really important to her, from her records and her posters and the clothes, in her closet and the books and all of it. I remember being a teenage girl, and yeah, you're collecting things as a reflection of who you are. And, there was a lot of activity, and she just really felt like there was a gap there that, she couldn't imagine um not having those things, because feeling like herself was so important, and she wanted her friends to feel like themselves. So we did two different Instagram posts, and one was what she was looking for, and the other one was that why this was important. And that was that, teenage girls during times of crisis, their mental health is not considered, not because it doesn't matter, but because a lot of times the families are just in survival mode, and that it's a specific need. And girls at that age have specific, things that they're worried about and dealing with, and they need additional support in order to be able to, get through it.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. And as I'm listening to you all, I'm imagining, those young people and just everybody who finds themselves in their situation, even that you're physically alive,
Mhm.
is just losing everything that you've built, you've collected, those little pieces that you named, those are parts of our identity.
Mhm.
And especially at such formative age, when every little thing matters, those things become sentimental, they'll sometimes define who we are because we're still figuring out who we are, where we belong, what we like, what we dislike. And it's even more critical in that age, not being fully equipped, emotionally, only because they're still developing,
Right,
and having found yourself in such a crisis.
right.
Um, what maybe struck you about Avery's response to this situation, if anything? What maybe that moment revealed about how young people are already equipped with leadership and empathy, as you said about Avery,
Mhm.
and the capacity to respond to crisis in such a way that actually becomes a movement. And
Mhm.
we will talk about that in a moment.
Yeah, I think, well, one, I know, that Avery is a leader, and she has really strong opinions about a lot of things. And I've always tried to raise her to speak her mind. I think it's really important, for all teenagers, but, girls in particular, to feel confident that they should. And that they have that every girl has something unique to say. I think that that was, something that I instilled in her from a really young age, and doesn't always, get encouraged in girls. I
Mhm.
certainly didn't get encouraged to speak up and speak my mind growing up. So maybe that's why I do that. But, I certainly noticed that, you know, she felt very strongly, very, very quickly, and she acted very quickly and
Mhm.
really pushed for it. And she's got so much determination. And that was something that I noticed, that I thought this is really, really important to her. And so I'm gonna support it.
Mhm. And of course, the support that you got from you and the family and the community, it really makes a difference. But I think just her determination, as you said, and
Mhm.
the drive and the care for people and her desire to support in any way she could
Mhm.
is something that every young person I feel can find in themselves if they're
Yeah.
really given the space to act as a leader in the community. Lauren, what started as an act of care
Mhm.
quickly grew into something much bigger. It's been only a year, a little over a year, and Altadena Girls is a fairly well-established nonprofit organization, and it has transitioned from a crisis response to an entire grassroots movement. Can
Mhm.
you speak a little more about that, the transition that took place, how it evolved from its initial phase to what it is now? And maybe you can just share the mission behind Altadena Girls as it's growing and evolving as
Yeah.
a much bigger mission than just the crisis response.
Yeah, this is my favorite part to talk about. I'm so proud. And yeah, if you're familiar with our story, things got really busy really fast and really early. A lot of interest from brands, and a lot of interest from, makeup brands, hair, like all the different categories for teen girls, and a lot of like in-kind support, and then some monetary donations as well. And we realized early on that, as a family, having, volunteers show up and stick around, and to have that during crisis was so pivotal for my kids to have that support. And we really realized that, that the recovery was going to take a really long time, and we needed to make sure that we had a safe space for these girls to land. And so we built out this space on Colorado here in Pasadena, and it's an 11,000 square foot community center. We have music rooms that vendor sponsored where you can come in and just where there's an app where you can learn how to play an instrument and just no pressure. Everything's low pressure. You can just come in if
Mhm.
you want to just come do homework. There's food and snacks. There's a free boutique that's always here. Paris Hilton's team donated a Sliving Lounge, which is Slay and Living Your Best Life. We have dance and movement classes. We have art therapy, and it's really just a third space. It's not home and it's not school. It's a space to come
Mhm.
and just land softly, and that's enough. So we have activities, we have programs, and it's all built around, you know, making sure that everyone feels like they're stable and they have the things that they need and then giving them the space to be able to explore and to be creative and then get to decide like maybe I do want to learn to play guitar and we help you connect you with the resources to get there and it's very trauma informed in that way that
Mhm.
it gives you the space to be able to just process and then you have agency to choose, which I think and we all have experienced some trauma and in those moments you just feel like you've lost control, right? And you feel like you don't
Mhm.
have any choice. And we created this space so that girls can feel like they do have a choice and that they have a choice not only in, what their future looks like, but what defines them. Because I think
Mhm.
when you lose so much, it defines who you are. We lost our home in a flood in 2021 in Nashville, Tennessee, before we moved to LA. And, you know, I don't know that we fully processed it, but,
Mhm.
once we started doing this, I think we realized as a family, like, people don't want to be, and girls in particular, don't want to be, always, named as fire affected. Like, that's what you are. You're fire affected. Well, you're so much more than that. You are, but like,
Mhm.
what else do you want to do with your life? And, um, what does your future look like and what are you excited about? And that's how you get through hard times is by having something to look forward to in the future. And so that's what Altadena Girls is. We want every girl to come out feeling confident that she has a future and that she has access to the things that she needs in order to get there. So,
Mhm. Thank you so much for that beautiful response. It does really take a long time, sometimes a lifetime, to recover from major trauma. I know
mm,
that from my own experience, and really having spaces like Altadena Girls are so instrumental in the recovery process and the healing process. It really gives you an opportunity to feel safe
mhm,
neurophysiologically, and that allows you to be yourself and explore who else you are, in what other ways you can express yourself
mhm.
and really help create that compelling future, right? That
Exactly.
helps come out of that traumatic response
Mhm.
rather than being stuck in a label. Like you said, yes, you are affected by fire, but that doesn't define you. If
Right.
anything, it gives you an opportunity to rebuild in a completely new way
Right.
and develop that resilience. It's incredible work that Altadena Girls has been doing and will continue doing in the future. One thing that I want to ask you, Lauren, because your mission highlights something very important. Yes, everybody needs support, particularly young people in the times of crisis.
Mhm.
But what have you begun realizing about the deeper needs maybe these girls had or
Mhm.
they were even carrying before the fire struck? The fire just revealed them and it added to it. But was
Mhm.
there anything that you noticed about them as you started engaging and offering different types of support services?
Yeah, I think we've definitely noticed all the things that existed before. I mean, the mental health crisis that's a big part of our case for support is that existed before. And when you talk about and look at as a mom, like what we've been through as a family, just as one example. And when I look back at just the timeline of the flood that we went through, and then a lot of other things, and then COVID before that, and just
Mhm.
COVID and this fire is enough for this community to have been through for it to really impact their adolescence in a real tangible way that can't be ignored. And I remember I watched a documentary called Katrina Babies that talked about,
Mhm.
after Hurricane Katrina, how there really wasn't, a process in place to follow up with those kids. And some of them were displaced and moved on and, went to new schools, and those schools didn't know what was going on, or what they'd been through. And, we're new. And so I'm still trying to figure some things out structurally, but, we want to be here long term so that we can support in those ways. And everything from, being afraid to leave the house because of the ICE raids and having your parents detained, not having access to period care for that same reason, basic needs
Mm.
to, a domestic violence situation. Th those are the things that exist that women and girls deal with, prior to a crisis, but a crisis exacerbates those already existing needs. And we definitely have seen all of those things, bubble up to the surface. And we have strong relationships with other nonprofits locally that have, if we don't have the, infrastructure to support something, housing is another one, then we do referrals because the housing crisis here is real. That's a
Mhm.
basic need that there are a lot of families still living in, campers right now as they're waiting to rebuild. So, you know, and those are just layer after layer. And that's what I mean by, it's important that they feel like they have the agency to choose because you always have it, but trauma
Mhm.
takes that away from you. It makes you feel like you don't. And so the choices that you make, we know this as adults because we see hindsight is 2020. Um, the choices that we make when we're in that state maybe aren't always the best choices. And, you know, we might make choices that we never would have made had we not gone through that trauma.
Mhm.
And we really want to give girls back that power.
Mhm.
That makes sense.
Give back that power.
Yeah.
Yes, that's incredibly empowering, actually. And the girls need that. Everybody does. I work both with boys and girls, but being a woman myself, of having grown up a teenager who
Hmm.
experienced a lot of those things that you just named, I know that the challenge and the struggle is real.
Hmm.
And what you do is so important, just to empower
Hmm.
not just an individual, but the collective, like the feminine collective and just the youth collective in overcoming the crisis. And I
Hmm.
think as a collective, we've been through so many of those. You named COVID, and then other families have gone through other things, such
Hmm.
as losing their house on the flood. I can't even imagine
Hmm.
recovering and rebuilding after a major crisis, one after another.
Hmm.
So I really want to ask you, as an adult, as a conscious adult who's doing this work and is fully dedicated to supporting others, to supporting other families, and supporting the youth, how do you support yourself? Like, where does that energy and that power come from for you? Like, what does it take for you to sustain, right, that capacity and that ability to continuously give at scale, dealing with very deep traumatic experiences sometimes that others have been through?
I kind of chuckled when you asked that question because I don't know that I have the right answer yet. I think that if you're in this work,
Mm.
you are typically the type of person that gives too much. So I think that I've had a lot, learn a lot of lessons around that. But I think definitely rest. I think anytime I give advice to someone on my team, I always ask myself, like, are you doing that too? Like, you need to be
Mm.
modeling that. Um,
Mhm.
Everything feels urgent all the time, but you can't do the work if you're not here to do it, right? And so I think really prioritizing that. I had a dance party with my kids last night. It was way too late, but it was so much fun. And this morning we were all like, wasn't that so cool? Like that was awesome. And it's really simple and it was free. So, that was awesome. And you just go like prioritizing
Mhm.
family time. Now Sundays are our family days and, prioritizing fun. It's really simple. There's always a crisis. Everywhere you go, you turn around, there's something, and you should absolutely do something about it, but you'll burn out. And so I keep relearning that. I definitely think as women, we tend to just go, 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 go.
Mhm.
And, I was talking to my mom the other day and I said this year at the holidays, I want to sit with you. I don't want you to cook. I'll buy the food, whatever I need to do so that you'll sit. So
Mhm.
one of those things that I think it gets passed on and we have to break that cycle and rest. But it's hard.
Thank you so much. I'm really grateful for you voicing that and speaking into this space because I know there will be many mothers and grandmothers and educators watching this video. And sometimes we just need that reminder. As givers, we give without ever thinking about ourselves. And I've learned it the hard way. When I burned out as a school principal, I was fainting
Mhm.
several times a week and the medical system could find nothing wrong with me. But I
Um,
just
yeah,
exhausted. I depleted myself till the last
right.
drop, and I had nothing else to give. So doing this work, it's so important to remember to replenish
Mhm.
and to fill up your own cup, which is really difficult sometimes. And we just need that reminder and a permission to do that for ourselves and remind others to do it. I'm so excited to hear about the dance, party that you had last night. Sometimes it's just nothing. It's just making time and
That was
connecting with the
simple, right?
people that will love. Super simple. It doesn't cost anything.
Yeah, that's one of
Um,
the things that we actually, I think, are really, clear about with everything that we do at Altadena Girls is that we approach everything with joy because sometimes that's all you have. It's
mhm.
pretty simple. Yeah.
At the end of the day, yes, if you live the day with joy, amazing. Now, one of the central ideas of Altadena Girls, Lauren, is creating that safe space for girls to express themselves. And that's beyond physical safety, that's emotional safety, psychological safety,
Mhm.
self-expression safety, right? For them to really explore that deep-seated potential, maybe that seed of intelligence that was born with them, but it hasn't really found a way out yet because just the environment was not right, the circumstances were not right.
Mhm.
Why do you think spaces like this are so essential for the development of our youth at this formative age, for their mental health, for finding their sense of belonging in this hyper digital world that we live? Like, what is really the contribution of a space like Altadena Girls beyond physical safety in the moment of crisis and beyond the traditional way of the way we approach mental health? What else does Altadena Girl offer to the youth that has become part of your community?
Yeah, I think approaching everything with the sense of it's low performance, right? No, or no performance. Like this is a place of rest. So, we're being really intentional about what programming we're bringing on, and how we're delivering it because the feedback that we get from the girls is that they are stressed out and they're just teenagers, and I
Mhm.
think to myself, it's not going to slow down. So how do we teach them to prioritize that, give them the space that there are things to do here. It's all around creative expression because that's healing. And if it opens up the doors for you to be able to discover something that you maybe never would have done, like that's amazing. If it turns into something more, that's also great. But if it was just that you experienced playing a guitar and you'd never played a guitar before, I think there's so much value in that experience and knowing, go to a high school, then college, and then you go out into the world and you go, or at least for me, I know that I tried everything that I wanted to try. And now
Mhm.
I have to decide on one thing, and I think also peer pressure is also part of your development. Like you want to belong. You want to be able to feel accepted and regardless of your gender, if you're a girl or you identify with girlhood, the way that you show up is going to be different than if it were at school. It's completely different. So when we do have workshops, sometimes it takes a minute for everyone to get involved. Sometimes the first girl will go, okay, I want to do that. And then people start coming and trying. And it's really magical to see that. And then to see each time a girl does that, she starts to come out of her shell because she starts to feel safe. She knows that
Mhm.
she can try something. She doesn't have to be perfect. And I think, you know, that's something that as women we experience too, is that perfectionism is real, people pleasing, all these things. Like we have to just put ourselves into a box to be able to, you know, exist in the world. And this is a space where it doesn't matter. If you want to try this, that's really cool and you might love it. And if you don't, that's fine too. So I think that that really helps with the safety piece, and just
Mhm.
making sure that you understand that there's no judgment here.
As a recovering perfectionist, I can so relate to
Same.
everything
I'm
that you
still,
said.
yeah, still
Yes,
working on it.
I'm still working on it too. And
Yeah.
I think the worst thing is to really learn to connect a sense of being loved and finding a sense of belonging to being a perfect, which
Mm,
is the hardest thing to recover from. I'm still working on it in my 50s. And that's something that we don't want our youth to internalize, boy or girl.
right.
And one thing that you mentioned really stood out. Everything really is so important, but one thing I really want to reiterate is that performance-based, almost achievement-based, spaces where
Mm,
there's nothing wrong with that, but having a space where you can just, like you said, it's low key. There's no need to be somebody, right? It's
right.
just all about being safe in this space and in this true connection with self and others for whatever needs to emerge. And you discover, you learn about yourself, just
Yeah.
like you learn about others and about the world and the community like this.
Mm,
So important. I don't think our children get that at school. There's a lot of hyper emphasis on performance, and I understand there's a place and time for it, but they need these communities, this container, safety containers for them to explore other things.
yeah.
um so for the parents and maybe adults
Mm.
listening to this conversation, Lauren, what can they learn from the Altadena Girls model, excuse me, about how to better support girls in their communities?
That's a great question. I think the way that you feel, like the way that your nervous system is, if you feel safe or not, has a lot to do with how well you learn. And some kids do really, really well in traditional school and there's no issue whatsoever. But if you've had trauma and sometimes just maybe it's just how you're wired, if you feel unsafe or you have a hard time making friends or any of these things, you need the extra time and space to slow down and regulate. And that's what this is. It's like it truly is a place to come and regulate. And there's a lot, like I said, there's a lot of things that you can do, but um, and as parents, I think we all know these things intuitively. Like we know
Mhm.
it's not, I mean, there's so much science and so much research to back up everything I'm saying, but it's intuitive as a parent, and just as a human on this planet, when you're working, if you're stressed out, then you do the worst work, or you leave things to last minute and you procrastinate and all these things but if you feel safe and you feel supported, then you are going to show up differently. And I think I see it as like, we want the result to be that kids feel safe and that they're educated and that they're, well-rounded and all these things. But I think the most important thing to me is that my kids um, feel safe first. Like, not that that's the result, but that's the prescription is safety, as much as we can. Obviously, we can't control everything. And that's the point of a space like this for me is like, look, I'm not perfect. When I was going through losing everything in a flood and as a single parent, I lost so much and I couldn't be there for my kids in the way I wanted to. And that's what this is for because, we can't do it all.
Mhm.
But I definitely would want adults to take from this model that, if a child is really struggling in a situation, maybe just ask like, how safe do they feel? Because, I think behavior is communication and, maybe they just need to have a space to be able to talk to somebody about what's going on, or maybe they just need to have the space to be able to feel validated that something about the
Mhm.
situation's not right. Um, I think teaching them to trust those instincts is really important.
Mhm.
It's hard to do because you're working with, a school and education system that is extremely, stretched. Like I
Mhm.
think teachers are heroes but everyone's stretched so thin. But if we can do that as adults and look at the bigger picture and know that they're going to learn what they need to learn in the time that they need to learn it if they feel safe. And so that should be first priority.
Mhm.
in my mind.
Thank you so much for sharing that, Lauren. We definitely speak the same language. And yes, the teachers are heroes. They are stretched very thin. And one of my missions is to really bring this information and the tools and the practices to them in
Hmm.
order for them to regulate their nervous system, because our youth learns regulation through co-regulation. And
Hmm.
even if the child or the young person or teenager has all the tools, they're equipped with it, they don't get practice of that if they're surrounded by dysregulated adults. And not because there's no blame, right? Take out blame out of this equation.
Hmm.
And because there's just a lot the adult is dealing with. Like you said, being a single
Sure.
parent, I've been there too. There's just so much, but that really becomes our number one priority, our own internal work that
Hmm.
we need to do in order then to show up as that positive role model and a true regulated support
Hmm.
for everybody who we're responsible for and deeply care for.
Hmm.
And that's really the only way we can make a difference. And that's really what I'm trying to do. And that really allows our youth to build their inner architecture, is what I call it,
Hmm.
and to find their own inner anchor, that core, develop that core to help them get through challenges in life,
For sure.
because crisis can hit anytime and anywhere.
You just need the tools.
You
Not
just
that
need the
makes it
tools.
perfect, but it gives you something to start with at least.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Now, Lauren, you've spoken about transforming the short-term relief into lasting change. With it is already happening. It has gained so much traction. Like you said, different organizations and companies and even celebrities. You can see all of that on your nonprofit page on Instagram have really responded to the call of Altadena Girls. Now,
Mm.
what does that vision look like for Altadena Girls moving forward in the years ahead? Where do you see this going?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I've been saying that this year is year one. Last year was year zero because we were in crisis. And we're really working on listening to the girls and, seeing what the needs are now and long term, and obviously focused on this community first. I would love to see this in other cities. I
Mm.
think the thing that almost every single woman, I'm not even exaggerating, has said to me is, I wish I had this when I was this age. So that tells me that this need is real beyond just one crisis, but also, like I said before, because there are so many crises, unfortunately, and we just need to be better prepared. And just like, many of the amazing organizations here locally are preparing for another, potentially another fire. Like, what can we do better next time to make sure that,
Mhm.
things don't happen? And I see this as that. And I also see one thing that happened in the very beginning that I see as a huge, powerful resource, is peer-to-peer support. Um, I have a huge box filled with letters from and notes from other teens across the country that sent notes of encouragement. I know how you feel, like empathy and just support. And I'd really love to see that as part of our model long term. Um, because I think, like, just like with Avery, we lost her home in a flood. She didn't realize why she was responding so strongly, but it was definitely part of it. She said later, like, I definitely understood the feeling and wanted to do something. And I see that as part of the long-term model as well. And, I think it just goes to show, because Avery said, I want to give all of my things in my room to my friends. And I said, I don't have the money to replace what is in your room. I said, but you can help, by asking other people to help. And I think that's also agency in a moment of
Mhm.
trauma, is going like, doesn't matter how much money is in your pocket, you have something that's valuable to give, and a way to give back and to support your community. So I think that those are things that I would like to see long term as part of our model, whether it's physically in another space or online. I'm not sure yet. Still working on that.
Like you said, it's year one. So there's so much potential that I see for Altadena Girls, and I can see the value of a community like this in every city and a small village, because the girls These days really need to be empowered. We need their voices, we need their energy to be out there to balance out everything that's happening in the world.
For sure. Yeah.
You spoke about the messages and the notes that you received from girls all over the country. That really speaks to our shared humanity at the
Hmm.
end of the day, because we all share the same emotions, the same gift, the same dreams, the same desires. At the
Hmm.
end of the day, as a young girl, we all want the same thing. We just want to be loved, to be happy, to be seen, to be validated, and to explore who we can become and what is our biggest contribution to this world.
Exactly. Yes, agreed.
Lauren, this podcast is called Potentiality, and it explores what becomes possible when we better understand human development and intentionally support young people as they grow, which is exactly what Altadena Girls is doing, having started as a crisis response and offering everything in a trauma-informed way. Now, if girls everywhere had access to these spaces, which is part of your vision now, as you shared, a space where they feel seen, supported, safe, and empowered to lead and to be who they truly are, what do you think becomes possible, not only for them individually, not only for their family, but for communities and even the humanity as a whole?
Gosh, that's such an amazing question. I feel like I have so many thoughts running through my head right now. I think what becomes possible is in anything you imagine. I know that sounds really cheesy, but like who would have thought that this would have happened? I don't think that we knew as a family that this was going to go this far.
Mhm.
And it was scary to keep pushing it forward, and it wasn't perfect. And I think, you know, I think it's just so important to, I don't know, I feel like these answers sound really cliche, but it's just really true. I just think that what's possible is you feel confident that you know what's right for you.
Mhm.
I think as a woman, and Avery said the same thing, that like, your instincts are so good. Imagine having grown up knowing that. Imagine what, like, what choices you would have made differently. I think almost every, I don't have regrets, but I definitely look back and go, if I would have known these things, but I did know, right? And so I think what's
Mhm.
possible is, that you trust yourself and you become a happier, more whole person because you know yourself really well at a really young age. And even if you change, you still know who you are and know what you stand for and feel confident, you know, stepping into the world and knowing that there are other people out there like you. I think having a community like this can teach you that at a young age, that you're not alone. And like you said, like, recognizing that, like, the humanity, that there are people no matter where you are that you can connect with in some way, and teaching you how to do that. But I truly think trusting your instincts, which I think is such an important under taught skill for girls. I think it would change the entire trajectory of your life. So
Mhm. You literally just named my mission. Probably more
we're so
beautifully
aligned.
than I could ever do because yes, absolutely. It's all about teaching, not even teaching because like you said, but I knew that. Well, I knew that as a 13-year-old, but somehow I
Mhm,
forgot and allowed my life to be in a completely different trajectory
mhm,
that had anything in common with what was truly mine. And
mhm,
I see a lot of youth now experiencing that
mhm,
because especially these days there's so much noise in the external world with social media, with all the spaces where they spend a lot of time on, especially in the
right.
digital world, and
Mhm,
it leaves no room for them to explore and to reconnect with that voice within that
mhm,
has all the answers. That
mhm,
is your inner GPS, right? This is our inner compass that we get detached from as a
mhm.
result of being caught up in the noise, and
Right,
trauma has a big role in that.
right.
And then we find ourselves at 40, 50, burnt out, miserable, maybe drunk even,
How did I get here? Right.
and not, yeah, how did I get here? And
Yeah,
so my mission is to prevent it as
yeah.
much as possible for as many young people as I possibly can, humanly can.
Right. I
So
love
thank
it.
you so much for voicing it and for doing what you do and really stepping into a bigger and bigger role as Altadena Girls grows and expands. I can see the future of it of being in multiple states and maybe even abroad in other countries. It really takes
Yeah.
that one dedicated person, and you and Avery, I think, are that strong team along with everybody else who supports you. So this is a vision who can truly become a reality even globally.
Thank you so much. That means a lot. We're excited about it.
Thank you so much for sharing your story, for all your thoughtful answers, and for the deep care that you have for youth and for girls in particular. I want to ask you, Lauren, where can our audience find you if they want to learn more about Altadena Girls and maybe how they can become part of this mission, or maybe start something of their own that is aligned with this model?
Yeah, I would say altadenagirls.org, our website. Our Instagram is at Altadena Girls. We have volunteer opportunities on our website. We're always looking for folks to help in the space. Um, there's just so much going on all the time. So I think that's probably the easiest way to connect. There's also a place to sign up if you want to become a member, Girls 13 to 17 in LA. Yeah, I think that's it.
Thank you so much for sharing all the resources. I want to remind our audience that everything Lauren just shared will be in the description box under this video. Lauren, is there anything that you would like to leave our audience with? Maybe like one message for them to walk away with. I'm sure they've already picked up so many different nuggets and insights that they're gonna, just move forward with and make a difference in their own world, in addition to what they're already doing. But there's one last thing that you would like to leave them with.
Yeah, I tell myself this every single day is to trust yourself and to do it scared.
Yes.
Every day
Thank
I
you for
wake
that
up and I have to
reminder.
just do it scared. Like I'm not ready, I'm not prepared, but I'm doing it anyway.
Yeah.
So
I figured out that that voice is never going away.
it
I'm
doesn't
just
go
learning how
anywhere.
to live with it, to
Yeah.
just do it
Or quiet
despite
it a
it.
little bit. Yeah. And trust your instincts for sure.
Thank
That's an
you.
important one.
Thank you so much for being in this space with me, for sharing your wisdom, your story, your journey, and your courage, because that's exactly what you just spoke to. It's just remember how courageous you are, regardless of how much fear you might be feeling, and just take the next step. So
Thank you.
thank you so much
My
for everything you
pleasure.
do. My best wishes and best of luck to you, Avery, the team behind Altadena Girls. I would really love to see this grow and become a global movement.
Thank you.
Thank you for being with us today, for tuning in today's episode. I sincerely hope that you found this insightful and valuable. Please remember to subscribe to the channel if you haven't yet to never miss an episode, and I will see you next time.